Welcome to the Liberty Mindset. Come and explore some of the ideas and issues facing our liberty. 2022 is an Welcome to the Liberty Mindset. Come and explore some of the ideas and issues facing our liberty. 2022 is an election year. As libertarians, we ask that you consider voting in the Liberty Mindset. Welcome, and thank you for your time. Okay, welcome everybody. This is Liberty Mindset. Let your food be your vaccine? Question mark. This is episode really season 2, 2.5. This is in prelude to we're having a medical doctor on Friday at noon Pacific time here on the channel. The room is scheduled, so you can look it up on the calendar here on Call-In. We will also be, as usual, live casting, simulcasting on YouTube at the Liberty Mindset YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to that, you'll be notified when we go live. Dr. Jason Dean is a practicing physician here in the United States, and he has actually a lot of interesting views on liberty in the fact that how to become more free, essentially through both health and financial well-being. We'll be talking to him for a little while, about an hour on Friday, starting at noon Pacific time. But this and leading up to it, I wanted to do a quickie because we're talking about some interesting things coming in the future. Thankfully, they haven't arrived yet. There's still time to make ourselves express our opinions on this to our useless leaders. So let me start off by saying, let your food be your medicine. Though attributed to Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, that phrase does not appear anywhere in his writings. As a matter of the fact, the first time that shows up is in around 1926. This was during a big push towards veganism, part of the temperance movement. What is said, translated from the Greek roughly, is, I will apply dietetic and lifestyle measures to help the sick to my best ability and judgment. I will protect them from harm and injustice. I find that whole phrase fascinating because, we talk about the Hippocratic Oath, and that is a far cry from the Hippocratic Oath. What I'm going to bring to our attention today is grow and eat your own vaccines. This is from the University of California. Apparently, the University of California, Riverside and the University of California, San Diego have gotten together to try to make the future happen. And this is not a new article. It's from September 2021, but it hasn't worked yet, and so therefore we're not yet dealing with it. And I'm not here to base on GMO foods or non-GMO foods, here simply to inform. Here's the article. The future of vaccines may look more like eating a salad than getting a shot in the arm. UC Riverside scientists are studying whether they can turn edible plants like lettuce into mRNA vaccine factories. Messenger RNA or mRNA technology used in COVID-19 vaccines works by teaching our cells to recognize and protect against infectious diseases. One of the challenges with this new technology is that it must be kept cold to maintain stability during transport and storage. If this new project is successful, plant-based mRNA vaccines, which can be eaten, could overcome this challenge with the ability to be stored at room temperature. The project's goals, made possible by a $500,000 grant from the National Science Foundation, are threefold, showing that DNA containing the mRNA vaccine can be successfully delivered into the part of the plant cells where it will replicate, demonstrating the plant can produce enough mRNA to rival a traditional shot, and finally determining the right dosage. Ideally, a single plant would produce enough mRNA to vaccinate a single person, said Juan Pablo Giraldo, an associate professor at the UC Riverside's Department of Botany and Plant Sciences, who is leading the research, done in collaboration with the scientists from UC San Diego and Carnegie Mellon University. We are testing this approach with spinach and lettuce and have long-term goals of people growing it in their own gardens, Giraldo said. Farmers could also eventually grow entire fields of it. Key to making this work are chloroplasts, small organs in plants and cells that convert sunlight into energy the plant can use. They're tiny solar-powered factories that produce sugar and other molecules which will allow the plant to grow, Giraldo said. They're also an untapped source for making desirable molecules. In the past, Giraldo has shown that it is possible for chloroplasts to express genes that aren't naturally part of the plant. He and his colleagues did this by sending foreign genetic material into the plant cells inside a protective casing, determined the optimal properties for this casings for delivery into the plant cell is speciality of Giraldo's laboratory. For this project, Giraldo teamed up with Nicole Stemets, a UC San Diego professor of nanoengineering, to utilize nanotechnologies engineered by her team that will deliver genetic material to the chloroplasts. Our idea is to repurpose naturally occurring nanoparticles, namely plant viruses, for gene delivery to plants. Stemets says, some engineering goes into this to make some nanoparticles go to the chloroplasts and also to render them non-infectious towards the plant. For Giraldo, the chance to develop this idea with mRNA is a culmination of a dream. One of the reasons I started working in nanotechnology was so as I could apply it to plants and create new technological solutions. New technology solutions. I would have used technological, but that's okay. Not just for food, but for high-value products as well, like pharmaceuticals, Giraldo said. Giraldo also is co-leading a related project using nanomaterials to deliver nitrogen fertilizer directly to chloroplasts where the plants need it most. Nitrogen is limited to the environment, but plants need it to grow. Most farmers apply nitrogen to the soil. As a result, roughly half of it ends up in groundwater, contaminating waterways, causing algae blooms, and interacting with other organisms. It could also produce nitrous oxide, another pollutant. The alternative approach would be to get nitrogen into the chloroplasts through the leaves and control its release. Much more efficient mode of application can help farmers improve the environment. The National Science Foundation has granted Giraldo and his colleagues $1.6 million to develop this targeted nitrogen delivery technology. I'm very excited about all this research, Giraldo said. I think it could have a huge impact on people's lives. Okay. So, having your vaccines come in through your food. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful theory. Now, interestingly enough, vaccine permission is, something that was looked at over the last couple of years, where we didn't have anybody asking us permission, and we were trying to force it as much as possible, though they never actually got to that point, unless you had to work for a living. So I don't know, folks. What do you think? How are we going to address this? I didn't say stop. I don't know if we can, but how would you address it with the people that that represent us? For me, the first thing that comes to mind is food labeling. Making sure that whatever these plants or seeds, they got to be specific that they're genetically modified and that they produce an mRNA vaccine. Now, the mRNA vaccine, as we know, some people take it, some people don't. I'm not going to judge on that unless you want to. But the reality is it uses our own body to manufacture a poison that is now known as a poison called the spike protein. So, any thoughts on that? I see I actually have some listeners. Anybody want to come and talk and tell us what you may think about growing your own vaccine? Hey, Dickie, welcome to the program.
First time caller, long time listener. Hey, Gregor.
Well, I've only been doing this a couple of weeks, so I don't know how long time, but thank you for coming.
It was a joke. Hey, man. what? I'm sorry. I was in early. Could I get a thumbnail? What you're suggesting?
Sure. What is the research? There's research being done at the University of California, and both in Riverside and with cooperation of San Diego, UC San Diego, and Mellon University, and they're trying to genetically engineer plants, specifically lettuce and spinach is what they're working on, so that they will deliver the mRNA vaccines, not just COVID, but other vaccines, into your system through your consumption of the plant life. It's an experimental method right
What
now.
benefit? What benefit would they are they suggesting that would be?
Well, why would you have to get a shot if you can eat your vaccine?
Would are they considering the implications, or is this? They think that they've got that taken care of.
Well, I don't know. Do scientists ever consider the implications?
Well, so
I mean, it's
maybe
right now. It's in the research stage. They've got a $500,000 to play with the research. They're using nanotechnology that they're developing with other studies in order to get to develop delivery methods for essentially telling chlorophyll based plants to generate other byproducts that we can use. Their goal, literally, with this, and stated in the article, was that you could actually buy seeds, grow at home, grow your vaccines at home, and take them. That's the example they used. They also said it could possibly eventually become commercial, meaning your spinach in the grocery store would also be your vaccine.
regardless of whether someone needs it or not.
Well, of course, depends on the government currently thinks everybody needs it, regardless of whether you need it or not.
That is scary on its face, um, but at the same time, I don't know enough about it to make an intelligent assessment.
Okay. The article is in the description. If you look down in the description for this episode, the article I just read, I posted in there, is under the things to read, and you can find out a little bit about it. So, yeah, no, go ahead. I see this Vlad's here. Let's see if Vlad wants to come play. And Sheila's coming, and I see Sheila there, and I'm just going to invite her to speak because I know I can't shut her up. So, Vlad, welcome to the
Hi,
show.
thanks for letting me
How's everyone? How's
join you.
everyone? Sheila, Gregor. I think we all have something to say, and believe me, we could go on for hours. But as long as you're not like Lance, okay? Sheila, I love. She's awesome. I love to hear her.
I
Gregor, you're
hope
not
I'm
that.
not like Lance.
No, no, hell no. No, no. But
Lance is
anyway,
lame
Gregor.
talk.
The thing is, look, Gregor, this seems like a great idea, but the moment they put in, if it would have been something else other than the mRNA, it just brings chills, kind of like what Dickie said. It's scary.
I'm with you on
I mean,
that.
who the fuck are these students to determine the way of life for people based on a hunch? I'm a scientist. We're gonna do research and develop whatever the hell. You don't got a reason in the world to be altering things. There's a reason why things should stay the way they are, and let true professionals that do husbandry work in agriculture do their job instead of coming around and being a new type of Monsanto now with the power to change to try to make vaccines. Nobody's asking for that. I know this is not going to get very far, and I compare it to this, Gregor. You know this impossible meat thing didn't go that far. It's losing out, right? The
Have you
impossible meat
tasted it?
industry is losing out. Nobody's interested. Very few people.
Oh,
So it's lost money. And if that shuts down because people don't care, if that's commercialized as it might be, there's just people that don't care for Impossible Burger. I don't want an Impossible Burger. Even if it's tasty, I like it, and I've had it one time. I want the real deal. I want moo. I want to hear moo when I'm cooking that shit at home. Burgers, steaks, whatever. I want to hear moo. That's what I want to hear. When I want the real deal. It's like some people have to. I mean, what is this going to start? Honestly, some kind of protest, civil war. I
Well,
mean,
I
people are
think the
just doing. Scientists are doing whatever the hell they feel, and nobody's asking. I don't care how intellectual, how educated they're. Nobody's asking them. This is like evil genius kind of thing. Go ahead, Burger.
well, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think it's and especially the mRNA vaccine. Though on paper it looks like a great idea, I'm really based on results, not a fan because of what they done, what they have done to even Bill Gates came out yesterday and said, well, maybe it wasn't as successful as they thought. I mean, and he was one of the grand masterminds behind the whole program, apparently. So they're starting to figure out that the mRNA vaccine, the current one, is not what they wanted. The scary part is they're looking at it as a fast way to turn around vaccines because the speed at which they can create quote vaccines, which they had, of course, redefine in order to make this a vaccine, because it's a more of a treatment than a vaccine, the mRNA treatment. But yeah, no, well, what worries me the most is if they figure out a way to do this, is that all of a sudden they're going to infect it into the food source. It'll be something that people won't even know that they're taking because it'll just be there, and they can put anything they want in there. And I'm not against vaccines. I'm against forcing people to take them. I mean, I have not taken my boosters on my mRNA vaccine, but I took the first two shots. I had no problem personally with it, but after as I watched what happened with the new batch of shots that came out and saw how little testing there was before the release, and I saw how ineffective it was being against the virus itself, it was like, why on earth would I take that?
Exactly.
And everybody should have a
No, but
choice.
but but you see what the sensitivity in this, that the what gets people, the drive fear and anger, is you're getting into the food supply, and people need to survive. So what? Now we're going to be forced to be taking this back that might work with some kind of chip that we have in our arm. That's eventually what's going to happen. We're going to be chipped, digital coin, in the name of doing away with fake identity, or or
I
the
don't
or
think
thievery.
they're gonna necessarily have to chip us if they can insert nanotechnology into the food, and they're just
And
trying to find a way to get certain technologies in the body so that it will do what they want. But and this is how they could do it. If they could get you to ingest nanoparticles that collect around a certain brain function,
mhm.
or attack your your
The tumors
endocrine
and
system.
cancers. Yeah. Well, you see, the nanotechnology has even been brought up in movies. I would say, as invasive as that might be, in order to get to these problem areas that it's impossible for medicals to get into, otherwise they'll kill you, like cancers and tumors, that would be phenomenal. Regarding nano, like little pellets of nanobots going in there and destroying, all the cholesterol, destroying all the tumor in a part of your brain that's, they you can't be worked on, or kill you, or whatever the case. I would agree that, but then that gets taken out, right? Unless one gets lodged in there somewhere and they can't take it out, that'll be a different story. But this thing where they get into the food supply, so what? I mean, I eat this broccoli with our mRNA thing. Do I become a
Mhm.
broccoli monster, broccoli zombie, or something? I mean,
Well,
that's the shit.
I think that the whole point of the mRNA is it's a gene therapy. mRNA changes your genes,
Hmm.
so it can manipulate the way your cells are manufactured or manufacturing themselves, like a virus.
Hmm.
So it reprograms your DNA from within. So I'm not saying it could turn a black person into
A
a
white
like a
man.
Chinese person overnight,
Getting
or a
back.
white person overnight.
Yeah.
But
Then
I'm
then
saying
then then that would be more like the movie Iron Sky. Iron Sky.
Uh-oh.
I'm pretty sure you saw it.
but
Big.
they might want to manipulate the genetic code of certain people they don't like, who are dissidents. They're this whole exercise has been a complete and utter, expository. The people who didn't take the vaccine, well, those are the new dissidents. The ones who didn't take the vaccine. How are we going to get them to take a vaccine they don't want to take?
Or
An
Shayla.
mRNA vaccine they don't want to take.
Or
We just feed it to them,
exactly, but not
and
only
then we
that.
don't tell them
Shay,
it's in there.
yeah. Shayla, they feed it to you and they say, let's give this to Shayla. Let's make her a little old 90-year-old woman, even though we know she's this age right now. Let's just shrink her down to that old age with dementia. They put the mRNA in the food. Next thing you know, you go next week to visit Shayla. Hey, where's Shayla? "Hey, I'm here. I'm like, oh shit, man. They got to you, right? So they couldn't get rid of you. They just
Yeah,
made you
I'm
old.
wearing Depends all of a sudden. I'm drooling. I'm asking you to hand me my glasses.
Anyway, I'm gonna let Gator speak. Go ahead, guys.
Thanks.
That's a bad future. That's a
Hi,
really
Gator.
bad
I see you
future.
have a little bit of... You're saying something we're saying isn't accurate, so let us know.
There's three aspects to this which are kind of not all fully covered by the article. So there's the obvious legal consent, medico-legal issues around vaccination, treatment, gene therapy. That's one thing. Second thing is technical capability. And then the third thing I'd argue is what the article tells you about the scope of either of those two things, right? So based on what you've read on that article, do you believe that there is a technical pathway to get RNA from a plant literally into your cells?
Well, based on the article, that is the goal. I'm not saying they're there. Okay, but
So-
based on the article, that was the goal that they wanted to do, is that you would literally eat your lettuce and get vaccinated.
Right, okay. So one thing to bear in mind is that isn't possible at the moment, right? Because, and this is what's misleading about this reporting, and I would argue that based on my experience in it, and all of my sort of involvement with the scientific community, particularly around analysis of reporting versus fact versus truth, and how research is basically poorly described, and also the kind of levels that the extent you have to go to really look into what research is achieving, and that's never accurately reported. The whole mechanism of the mRNA and gene therapies isn't just about mRNA, right? If you basically inject yourself directly with messenger RNA, it will be destroyed inside your body through RNase, which is an enzyme which free floats around your circulatory system, designed specifically to break down unwanted RNA. And there's another one called DNase, which basically is a containment system, right? Which basically stops you sending or having sent false or unwanted or alien DNA, RNA messaging around your system, right? And the whole fundamental design of the two different types of vaccine were that the mRNA payload and the DNA payload were shielded by either a lipid nanoparticle wrapper or an adenovirus viral vector. And they were the things that protected the payloads from the body's defense mechanisms of RNase and DNase, and then delivered it into the cells of the human recipient. So if you then go and make a plant express mRNA because you can fuck with its genetics, right? And then a human eats it, you've got two primary technical problems. One is, can you make any meaningful trace of the RNA survive any of the human digestive process whatsoever in order for it to enter the bloodstream or penetrate any of the cellular of any human cells at all, right?
Right.
And if not, how on earth can you get the plant or the animal product to produce not just the mRNA, but also some kind of protective, resilient wrapper which can perform the same kind of ionic charge-based transfection into a human cell? Right? Those things are hugely technically complicated, right? Which the article doesn't even touch. And one of the things about why I would counsel you to really actually pay attention to what's lacking in the article and why you shouldn't really react to it very much without further knowledge is because what it says is it says that they're trying to look for how to make the plant produce mRNA and to a dose that's specific enough or high enough to get it to dose a human. But it doesn't even remotely go anywhere near any of the known technical intermediate stages of what I've just described. Right? I mean, literally, there's even a missing case, which is, hang on, if you cook spinach or you cook meat that's been self-vaccinated, quote unquote, how can you guarantee that the cellular content of mRNA or DNA survives the cooking process before you even get into eating it, right? So I would say that on the technical level alone, there's so much missing from that article that the article is practically misreporting the true scale of the technical complexity of even trying to do it. Now, that's not to say that they should keep trying to do it. Contaminating the human food supply with essentially genetic engineered technologies which could remove all possibility of freedom of choice and medical bodily autonomy is frankly clinically insane. But in the scope of that article, it is massively technically lacking.
Oh, well, and yes, this is, I mean, the research is so not far along that they didn't cover any of that. They only vaguely hinted at possibly using viruses or other nano devices in order to insert it into the plants. And you are absolutely correct. Just eating mRNA, if you were to drink a vaccine of mRNA, I would be hard pressed to think that you'd get any therapeutic value out of it. Right? Just because it's not in the right place to do the right thing. I mean, sure, it can maybe produce mRNA or spike proteins in your stomach, but that's just going to, chances are, that's just going to pass out of your system. So yes, what you're saying is absolutely correct. My whole purpose of bringing this article was just to bring to the awareness what is being researched, so that we can, encourage or discourage research in areas that may be something that society doesn't want. That's something scientists are never one to think about. It's never about, should we do this? It's always about, can we do this? Which I guess that's, one would say that's the cost of creativity and moving along. But part of me, is like, well, talk to Canada. They have their wonderful MAID program now. And the question is, yes, they can do that, but should they be killing in 2021 10,069 people just because they decided they needed to? So yeah, the question here is to bring it up so people can think about it and decide in their own minds whether or not this should be researched even. Because what is the benefit of this?
But one thing that people should be aware of, which is why I'm going into this level of detail, is look at the primary responses of the two people who spoke. They didn't even ask, if I cook my food, could RNA survive the cooking process?
Right? Which it can't by itself.
It's the most fundamentally basic thing, because if you cook infected meat that's infected with an animal, a virus that's capable of crossing from the animal to human vector, and you thoroughly cook meat, that virus will be killed and the meat rendered safe, which is one of the reasons why humans cook food, right?
Right.
So the same applies in this case. It's a fundamentally basic question, right? And yet that didn't come up. And also people run around saying nanotechnology without even understanding what that is, because in this case, right? And you said, I mean, I know that this sounds really annoyingly nitpicky, but it's important because this stuff hinges on technical capability, right? If you literally injected the vaccine into your body, right? The lipid nanoparticles would have to be capable of surviving all of the defensive, your entire digestive tract, the acidity and everything else that it's be exposed to, plus any immune response that's occurring inside any of your mouth or digestive tract, right? And even if it could, it wouldn't necessarily lead to production of spike protein in your stomach. All you would get is an mRNA payload sitting in a load of stomach acid. That mRNA would have to literally transfect into cells inside your body, right? Basically, probably through your digestive tract, in order for any spike protein to be produced. So you've got at least 3 things it has to survive before you get to spike protein, right?
Right.
It's not.
Well, right. I mean, but
carry
the
spike protein.
The intention of the, and I'm not really sure that the result or the intention is spike protein specifically, because I'm not even sure what the purpose of this current vaccine is anymore, other than to be a boondoggle for Pfizer and to get people to take it as often and as frequently as possible to kind of. Well, the first 2 vaccines ended up being a way to medically sabotage your immune system to future, self-protective or immunological responses, your natural immunological responses to the COVID-19 virus. That's what it did. Whether or not people thought it should or intended to or not, that's what it did. And so it precipitated many other boosters ad hom, and just on and on and on to infinity, because your body can no longer produce the natural immunity to the disease. And so the only way you can protect yourself against the disease, according to the government, because you took the vaccine, is because you took the vaccine. So keep taking the vaccine. So that's kind of that's a boondoggle for Pfizer. And so if they want to get the biomedical industry involved, there has to be kind of like an intent. And if the intent is to sell medicine we don't need, they'll figure out a way to do that some other way, not necessarily through a genetic test. Now, if it's a control issue, I mean, I can see everything scientifically through what you're saying. But they could potentially adjust things. And then there's the politics of the FDA. Okay, what is the medical need for a food delivery model for vaccines? What is the need based? Is it to try to feed it to? Did any of this come up in the grant proposal or any of the things that you read, Gregor? Like, what was the need based projection for a food-based vaccine?
Well, they're just, I mean, from what they hinted at, if they just thought it was a marvelous way to deliver vaccines because it was there and easy. See, they're not looking at the need. They're looking at, this is what we can do.
Well, do you think it would be cheaper to manufacture? Is that the sale point? Is that we'll just grow it, or and then feed it to the poor African children? What is it? What's the need?
Well, I don't think personally. I'm not a big fan that there is a need, but
I don't
research grants aren't necessarily contingent upon a need basis, right?
Right. They were just given a project, and I see. To me, this looks like we're going to have sort of the Johnson & Johnson Monsanto thing happen, where all of a sudden you're either one of 2 things is going to happen. Farmers are going to be required to grow this stuff to sell it, So there'll be non-reproductive seeds that they have to buy from Monsanto or Johnson & Johnson all the time. And that's how we'll get it out into the food supply, and it'll turn out to be the cheapest spinach out there. So that's how they're going to get you to take it. I mean, that's what they do with milk even. They subsidize milk so they can get you the kind of milk they want you to have. And currently there's a lot of seeds that you have to buy, not only that you have to buy from Monsanto, or Bayer, but also that you have to buy the fertilizers and the pesticides, because if you don't buy their pesticides, you'll kill the plants. I mean, it's just.
But when we're talking about these sort of things, right? Isn't it important to be specific and to avoid conflating on a panic or confusion basis several other things which aren't necessarily within the scope of the article that you've just raised, right? So
you have a valid point there. Yes, you do have a valid point.
Because what Sheila is saying is kind of radically out of scope. The reasoning behind mRNA or DNA gene therapies, okay, whatever, from a commercial point of view, in endlessly trying to convince people to take COVID boosters, which clearly aren't effective, is nothing to do, really, directly with a research grant application that seeks to generate an mRNA output in plant cells, right?
Well, maybe not, but it goes
necessarily
to kind of
anything
like
to do with each other when you really drill into
it. You know, what is the point of financing a grant? They're trying to get the vaccines in a person.
No, I can tell you, I can give you an example of why you would do this, right? It's very possible that a scientist has gone, you know what, in the current environment, there's shitloads of money around for research into these fields, and I can see a way to at least get a certain first stage funding for a first stage idea which could have actual scientific validity, or might fall at the first hurdle because we can't get it past the digestive tract. So I'm going to put together a research proposal and try and get some money, and look, I've just got 500 grand. That is literally what drives large numbers of people researching stuff, is can I come up with an idea? Can I peddle the idea in the current climate to get at least some research? Because if I can, I get some money to keep staying in the academic world. Whether or not it leads to something is irrelevant, right? Because if you're an academic, you know that most of your research will lead to an answer of no, right, and failure, because that's how science works. You cannot necessarily extrapolate that just because somebody has got research funding of a limited amount for a purpose, that you can extrapolate that a scenario that goes to the end. None of the scientists that I know would say that is credible.
So, I mean, he's really made a point there, Gregor, is that, I know that this has us climbing the walls because there was such a force-based initiative, and there still is to some extent, to get us to take the vaccine. So much that, we would totally have a rational basis for believing that, mad science would try to feed it to us involuntarily. I mean, that's where our mind would go since we were so challenged during the pandemic. But I think what Gator is really saying has real merit in that, hey, here's 500 grand, develop this. It might die in the stomach, but, can we do it? Yeah, maybe. And see, and that's kind of where it might die. It might die in the stomach, actually, Gregor.
Well, and there's, again, as my point for bringing this even up was just to make people aware of what's coming down the line, so we can decide how we want to encourage our electors to be able to regulate it before it shows up. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the distance between the idea of having you eat your vaccines and it actually happening are literally going to be years, if not decades, in the making, no matter how successful they are. And Gator, as you pointed out, it would be highly likely to be unsuccessful. I mean, most research projects, as you said, end in the answer of no. And though I'm really trying not to panic people, I'm also a firm believer that just being aware of something and having a thought about it, the whole purpose of science fiction, by the way, is to just have a think about something that could be. So when it comes, we're ready for it.
I think
I
that's I think
totally
that's
get
fair.
you,
But
though.
there's
I
one
mean,
thing
if
else.
they could have shoved this vaccine down our throats, they would have done it. If they would
Yeah,
have,
but hang
if
on a
they
sec.
could have poured it into a glass and said, "You drink this now, or else,"
Well,
they
yeah,
would
of
have done
course, they
it.
could do that with if they've got a delivery mechanism. Yeah, it didn't matter whether it was an injection or something else. If they had it in eye drops, they would have applied the same policy approach to it, right? But wait, there's something I'll say, because I agree, Gregor, with what you're trying to do, right? And I totally get it. But I've raised and will not labour the fact that when people who are ignorant, and I don't mean that in any rude way, I just mean that ignorance is a lack of knowing, and I'm ignorant about most things in the world, right? When people read reporting like this, who are basically, don't know enough to really run through all of the end to end problems and they can't really assess what does this mean, what does this really mean, or what are the hurdles or whatever, right? Then people are essentially slaves to a narrative, right? So that's one thing. The second thing, though,
You're never a slave to a narrative.
I forgot. Hang on a second, right?
What?
People are slaves to narratives if they are ignorant.
No, they aren't. I don't believe that.
Right. So anyway, the real fundamental
The only
point is
slaves
not
to narratives are
the
people
people.
who are
The real
paid
fundamental
to
point.
Hey,
draw
Sheila, let him
point out to
finish.
you-
Let him
Those are
finish.
the slaves
the
to
point
narratives.
I'll point out to you, Gregor, which you might find more useful in doing what you're doing, is this, and it's something that people are grossly missing, which is if you try to trace down the real fundamental means by which we're having stuff delivered to us now medically, you have to ask yourself, what's the platform technology? That platform technology is genetic engineering, full stop. Okay, and if you look into the regulatory environment around genetic engineering, it doesn't exist, right? And this is what citizens are completely missing. They're completely missing the fact that everything that's coming out now is all about genetic engineering, and nobody's saying, "Hang on, let's revisit the full-scale regulatory control, including citizen consultation around what should be genetically engineered." Right? We've already got, as you point out, genetically modified crops for various reasons, which are released into the wild and invariably have affected natural pollination cycles, so that it propagates outside beyond its intended boundaries. We've now got modified degrees of modified insects, which Ron DeSantis actually signed off a load of modified. If you believe the press, modified mosquitoes being released to try to ameliorate malaria, right? I mean, if you ask me,
I don't know. That was a Bill Gates project. I'm not sure if
it's
true.
happened.
You haven't provided a validated source.
Right, okay, well, fine. Just give me a minute or two, then I'll find it, right?
It was Bill Gates' fund and his idea. I remember that. But I don't really think you have any proof.
Well, fine. It doesn't matter, right? The point
it
is
does matter.
that doesn't take away from the point of what I'm saying, does it? The real fundamental issue here is not about whether or not somebody's trying to get something into food. It's fundamentally about genetic engineering in the entire
and it's also erroneous for you
process
to say
of
that
science being the primary pathway of delivering
there
medicine.
Is absolutely a regulatory environment in the United States for genetic research and for genetic outcomes.
Right. Well, but that is easily bypassed when you send the research outside of the United States.
Gator, you are a UK citizen, are you not?
Yeah.
Maybe you should draw down your fire, please, because you don't know our laws.
So the question then about this is how, if the regulatory processes in anyone's country is so good, how have we ended up in this situation where genetically engineered gene therapies of the mRNA and DNA COVID shots have been allowed to be introduced in such a carefree, irresponsible manner? It's because the regulatory environment governing these things is weak, is pitifully weak, and is deliberately bypassed through several known mechanisms.
Why don't you talk about the regulatory environment in the UK?
Yeah, it's the same problem.
I don't know if it's the same problem.
It
You
is,
don't know what
right?
our
And
laws
I can
are.
give you an example of
Why
exactly
don't you
how
talk
this is
about what you
bypassed,
know
right?
versus what you don't know?
Well, so the UK's equivalent to the FDA is the MHRA, and when you look at the FDA's documentation or you look at the MHRA's documentation governing these shots, they clearly explain in the EUA for the US and the CMA for for Britain, they clearly explained in December 2020 the regulatory scrutiny that these things were subjected to, and it was pitifully
Uh-huh.
lacking. Both of the
Okay, can
documentations
you
from
just
both of the
kind of
things said,
describe what should have been there that you didn't see?
yeah, they've not been tested for carcinogenicity, genotoxicity, human effects on human fertility, and there's something else I forget right now. And the reason why is very, very, very straightforward. It's because both the FDA and all of the other regulators who are all united under a global construct called the ICMRI, which is the International Conglomerate for Medical Regulatory Authorities, ICMRA, okay, they all agreed tacitly after a certain point in time to call these things vaccines. And it's only because they were called vaccines that they could be then subject to inadequate testing.
So they
Because,
laundered a vaccine classification, okay, as a means to thread through genetic research that wasn't, necessarily so
yes, correct.
over the top.
Which
Okay, so that
which
makes
shows
sense.
you how
That makes
weak
sense
the
what
whole
you're
system is.
claiming here. And if you wanted to make some regulatory rules adjustments, you would include what? The impacts to pregnant women, fertility, anything else, children.
Yeah, but this is
Anything else?
this is my point, which you seem to have pushed back on, which I'm proving I know enough about to be able to legitimately make these comments because I did the fucking research, right? I'm telling you that if you want to
What do you do
talk
for a
about the
living,
most
Gator? I mean, I
fundamental
know
issue
that's
here,
not your
it's
real
not
name,
about
but
whether
what is it that you
food can
do
make
for
a
living?
vaccine. It's about whether or not citizens and
What do you do
regulatory
for a living,
authorities
Gator?
and
What do you
governments
do
have
for
a
a
specific
living,
and capable
Gator? What do you
handle
do for a
on
living, Gator?
dealing with genetic
I'm not really
engineering,
listening to you
full
anymore.
stop.
I
And
want
they
to know what
don't.
you do for a living.
Sorry?
What do you do for a living?
That's completely irrelevant.
It's not.
Well, it doesn't matter.
It does.
Why? If what I've just said is correct and backed up in documentation, what I do for a
Well, I
living
mean,
is
you actually
irrelevant.
haven't provided any documentation.
Really? So
So
if you
I'm
want to
still
look at the
waiting to
FDA and
hear.
the FDA
You've thrown
EUAs
a lot
are
of
all
letters
publicly
soup at me,
available, and
but
they
I don't
say
know who
exactly
you
this.
are or what you're
They say
saying.
genotoxicity is not being tested
It
because
doesn't
it is
matter.
not
I
anticipated that
haven't seen
vaccines
anything. I don't know what
will
your
trigger
paperwork is.
genotoxicity. Same for
And you
carcinogenicity as a
can
fallout of that.
just
Okay, both of you, now you're
repeat
talking
until
over each
most
other
upset me.
and having a good time, and that's fine, but I don't see where we're getting anywhere.
Yeah, all I'd say, Gregor, is genetic engineering is a fundamental issue, and people are not really talking in those terms. So
Thank you, Gator. And I thank you for that awareness. Oh, okay. Then I'll let Hakeem come on. And what time is it? Yeah, we got just a few more minutes, Hakeem. So what do you
Hey,
think about
good.
genetically modified stuff? Is it Hakeem or
Well,
Hakeem? I guess there's no H,
it's
so it's just
Hakeem.
Hakeem, right?
It's Hakeem.
Okay.
So, hello, Gregor. Hello, Sheila.
Hi, Haku.
I know that you were asking Gator for some documentation. I can only say that I know that genetically engineered mosquitoes have already been released into the public. They've been tested in Africa. I just put the link to that. It's called Results from Months of Monitoring Following the First Release of Non-Gene Drive Genetically Modified Mosquitoes in Africa. And then there are several other links that I posted already in the chat. To Gregor's question, what do I think of genetic engineering? I think that it's a fantastic and amazing technology that we've come so far to be able to produce so many things with it. But there are a lot of inherent dangers with it because, um, for one thing, which Gator explained about, for example, different crops, the cross pollinating. There's lots of documentation about Monsanto's Roundup Ready crops that have blown into organic farmers' fields, and then the farmers have been sued by Monsanto for proprietary infractions. Um, and the so it's something like that which can cause lots of issues. I mean, farmers and people have lost their livelihoods in India because of something called Boligard that was produced by Syngenta and several other companies. Farmers are killing themselves by the thousands because they were promised that their crops would yield higher, but instead they were still infested with bollworms. And the farmers who paid lots of money out on loans to these companies like Syngenta and whatnot could not recover any of their money after their crops were completely eradicated by the failed genetically engineered crops. Um, Also, there's a lot of deception about genetic engineering and things that are also unregulated and put into the food already. For example, have
I do
either of you
believe
heard of
that.
have any of you either heard of canola?
Oh
Yeah,
yes, the
canola oil.
amazing
Yeah.
canola plant.
Right. Well, there's no such thing as genetic canola because, in fact, the word canola is a combination of Canada and oil. It's Canadian oil, and it's a genetically modified rapeseed plant. That was originally genetically modified in 1974 for use in industrial lubrication, and then found that it was still edible, so they put it onto the market. So, those are just a few examples
Yeah, I'd really
of
love to
what's
see the article about that. I've never heard that before, but I'd really love to see
okay.
It's
the
actually
article.
Well,
there are actually a lot of historical precedents in that, Sheila, and the fact
Do
that
you see it?
farmers get sued because the wind literally blows their crop.
Oh, I know.
Is
I know
just
about that.
that's
Yeah,
absolutely insane if you ask
we're
me. But
OCA donors here at this house.
yeah,
Are you aware of the OCA?
no,
yes,
Oh, yeah, that's the Organic Consumers
the Organic
Alliance.
Consumers Association, yeah.
Or yeah,
Um, and so, yes, so I mean, now Sheila, were you asking for the documentation about canola oil?
yeah, like anything you can, if you can just
Uh,
reach for it,
yeah,
really
well,
love to
there's
see it.
I mean, just a very easy search on it. You have canolainfo.org. I can put that link here that shows canola has come a long way since its simple beginnings. Plant breeding, initiated by Dr. Baldur R. Stephenson and Dr. Keith Downey in the late 1950s, was undertaken to change the nutritional makeup of rapeseed. Numerous studies since then have been conducted showing the benefits of canola, leading to widespread demand worldwide. So, 1974 Tower, the first canola was released. So I can
And that
put
it's
that.
grape seeds, like the seed of the grape.
No, rape. Rape
Oh,
seed
rape seed,
sounds like a very bad thing, but yes.
like a bad act.
Um,
Um,
yes, like a bad act, but that's one of them. I'll put the link here. I didn't really catch what Gator was talking about earlier.
I
Um,
apologize. I kind of overrode him a little bit because he just wouldn't dignify the ask for research. He was throwing a lot of alphabet soup out there, by force, as a way to browbeat the audience. And
yeah.
I just didn't see he just wanted to be authoritative and not provide any info. And
well, if you
so
want
that's something I
some
don't
of,
really that doesn't pass the smell test.
well, if you look on, for example, my sites like exercisingyourmind.com, I've been publishing on there for 17 years now. And several of my other sites have been online for more than 15 years. So I've been researching and studying for a long time. And one of the things, also, one of my degrees is in clinical hypnosis. So I use something called hypnoanalysis, in which I look through a lot of the documents and advertising and media in order to weed out some of the things that are being used against the public. in order to kind of get things passed and some of the things that are used. So, I mean, there are some, some pretty interesting things going on. I'm not necessarily in a panic about anything, but you know, just if you look at those three things, right? The 1974 release of canola, the fact that the pollen from genetically engineered plants are blowing into other people's fields, and that they've already released genetically engineered mosquitoes into the public already shows that maybe not everyone is actually quite aware about how prevalent it's actually already in our systems. And just another thing that's not alarmist, because I heard Gregor talking about it earlier, but there are a lot of things already being used as vectors to get um, to get certain things past very difficult systems. For example, it's very difficult to get certain drugs past the blood-brain barrier, which is one of the reasons why, for example, um, there's something called steady state peak in neuropsychiatry, in which they have to flood the body and get a person titrated up to, like, for example, with clozapine to 400 milligrams, so that the blood has a certain nanograms per milliliter of blood of the drug, so that it basically forces its way past the blood-brain barrier, because the blood-brain barrier doesn't let it through.
Mhm.
Also, there's a problem with this with getting uh, cancer chemicals into the brain, and so one of the things that's been developed years ago already is using icopentosanoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid, also known as EPA and DHA, that are found in fish oils, as vectors to basically cloak the molecules, the drug molecules inside them, because the myelin sheath is made up of those fatty acids. And so they've already been using these as drug delivery systems. Um, so there are already well-known and documented ways to get things past very difficult systems, including the digestive systems that won't break down and be destroyed, the bacterium and vaccines. Another one that's being used for cancer is taking a donor sperm, either from the partner or from a donor, for women who have ovarian cancer, and they load the head of the sperm with doxorubicin, for example, an anti-cancer drug, and once it reaches the ovaries, they hit it with infrared light, which breaks open the basically warhead and delivers the drug there. So there
Wow,
are,
that is
yeah.
insane.
Okay, I'm sorry. What was the website again? You do a lot of this writing on, Hakeem?
One of my main websites is exercisingyourmind.com. I have a lot of other authors that write on there now, that it's mostly mainstream stuff about life hacks. But if you go deeper into the website, like back to closer to, I would say 2013, back down to 2007, you'll see a lot of this stuff. Well, I can actually just put two of them here. One is called University. So I've kind of cloaked a lot of the more controversial things in the earlier documents, um, but you'd have to go a little bit deeper. I could go in there and look at some stuff, but I'm so active that I can hardly keep up. And plus, I have 13 or 14 authors who publish on that site for me now, um, that I
Okay.
don't really.
Well, I may have to do a
Um,
show just on your websites then, Hakeem.
yeah, two of them that have a lot of this information are university.hypnoathletics.com and exercisingyourmind.com. But I'll put them here right now really quickly,
Thanks.
just as a
I
reference.
manually typed in exercising your mind, so make sure I typed it right. But yes, please do.
Okay.
But it's been an hour, guys, so I'm thinking
Yeah.
about calling it. I really appreciate everybody who came on today and participated. Sheila, I'm going to let you have a last say before I close.
I mean, it's your show, man.
Wow, that was intense
I'm
and
putting the
deep.
links, and thank you for letting me speak, guys. I'm gonna get.
My pleasure, Hakeem.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. And Sheila, thank you for that deep and insightful comment that it's your show. Yes, it is. And thank you very much for coming and playing. This show is simulcast live on YouTube at The Liberty Mindset. And it is also going to be a podcast later, probably even later today, by tomorrow for sure, that you can find on all your favorite podcast thingamadigers. Spotify and Google and Apple. You can find it all. Find this podcast there. This will be the first video podcast for us on Spotify. So our now from in the future, our podcasts on Spotify will be video as well as audio. So you can either watch us and be bored and listen and be excited, whichever is better for you. And come Friday at noon, I have a show coming up with Dr. Jason Dean. And I'm going to have an interview with him here on Call-In and Simulcast as well. And I'd really like to invite you all to come listen and ask questions. He's got an interesting bio, and it might be educational. He doesn't know we talked about this today unless he's watching, which I don't think so. And I don't think they're related. Gregor? I just did this because I saw the article. Go ahead, Sheila.
Well, what does he do? What does Jason Dean do?
He's seems to be a homeopathic doctor with quite a large media presence that he's been participating in. He has Brave TV, is one of the...
Oh, Brave TV.
Yeah, he's the founder of Brave TV. I have no idea why he's coming on my little tiny podcast, but he is.
Well, he's giving you a shot. That's excellent.
Well, yeah, I've been, my John Gusty interview was the first one, and then I have this fellow, and then I have another guy who's a legal expert coming up in March that are far bigger than I deserve, and so I'm working on building my podcast. But anyway, I really like to appreciate everybody who came and listened. So you have multiple sources, and all I can say is remember to seek the truth and stay curious.
I'll absolutely do that.
You do that.
I will.
Good. I will see you guys later and appreciate the show. Wow.